Hello, beekeepers. I'm Alan Woods, and welcome to Chapter 1 of the Washington State Beekeepers Association Apprentice Beekeeping course, where we will be looking at the honeybee. In Chapter 1, we will look at the classification of the honeybees, honeybee subspecies, the eusocial characteristics of honeybees. We will look at the honeybee colonies, phases of development of the honeybee, and honey and other bee products. First, let's take a look at the classifications. In this section, we'll take a look at the classification of the honeybee, starting with the kingdom. Of the 6 kingdoms, the honeybee belongs to the Animalia or animal kingdom. All animals are made up of a complex multi-cell organism that does not produce its own food like plants, which produces their own food through photosynthesis. This kingdom consists of all living and extinct animals. Honeybees belong to the Arthropoda phylum of the animal kingdom, meaning they have a body consisting of a series of segments that has 6 or more jointed legs. Within this group, there are 4 classes: the crustaceans, crabs and lobsters, the arachnids, spiders and mites, the myopods, centipedes and millipedes, and hexapods and insecta. There are over 30 orders in the insecta or insect class, including butterflies, ants, and honeybees. Honeybees are in the Hymenoptera order, which also include ants, hornets, and wasps. These insects share the characteristics of having 4 membranous wings with few cross veins. The forewings are larger than the hind wings, and the mouth parts are formed for both biting and sucking. Honeybees belong to the Apidae family, which includes bumblebees and other social and solitary bees. This group share the physical trait of having a relatively long tongue. The genus Apis separates the bees that store honey and uses wax to make their homes from the other bees. The classification species separates the different honeybees in the genus Apis. For example, the European honeybee is Apis mellifera, the Asian honeybee is Apis cerana, and the giant honeybee is Apis dorsata. While these are different species of honeybees, they all store honey and use wax to make their homes. Within the classification of the Apis mellifera, there are subspecies. Let's take a look. While the honeybee may have originated in Southeast Asia, regional differences have caused subspecies to evolve slightly different traits and colorations, developing into the subspecies we know today. The most commonly known honeybees in the United States today are the Italian, the Carniolan, and the Caucasian. Let's take a closer look at their traits as well as those of the Russian and Africanized bees. The Italians are yellow in color and have 3 to 5 black bands around the abdomen. They are the most popular bee in the United States. They are a gentle bee and don't get highly excited when the beekeeper is inspecting the hive. They seem to have a resistance to wax moth and are more resistant to European foul brood than other subspecies. Being from a warmer Mediterranean climate, they tend to consume more winter stores than other bees. Because the Italian queen is more yellow, some beekeepers say that she is easier to spot in the colony. Carnolians are dark in color with gray or brown hair, which gives them a mute band appearance on the abdomen. These bees winter well because they originated in the southern Austrian Alps and are well adapted to colder climates. They conserve their winter stores and begin rearing brood later than the Italian, but when they begin brood rearing, they exhibit a rapid spring buildup. They are well known as being docile with a gentle disposition. The Caucasians are also dark bees with gray hair and resemble the Canolians in coloration. They are native to the Caucasus Mountains, which is the continental divide between Asia and Europe in the region between the Black and Caspian Sea. Like the Canolians, they can winter well in colder climates and they have a gentle disposition. They have a long tongue, allowing them more opportunity for foraging. They also tend to produce more propolis than other honeybees. The Russians are a dark bee that comes from the Primorsky Krai region of Russia. This strand of bee was imported into the United States in 1997 in response to the severe decline of the bee population caused by the infestation of varroa and tracheator mites, and have been used in breeding programs to improve existing stocks. Russian bees winter well in colder areas, have long tongues, and are not as gentle as the other three popular subspecies. They tend to produce just as much honey as the standard breeds, if not more. Africanized honeybees are known for their aggressive behavior. These bees are native to the African savanna and were brought to Brazil in the 1950s to create a strong hybrid bee that was resistant to pests and created large amounts of honey. Africanized honeybees are much more defensive than other breeds, with up to half of the colony reacting to protect the hive when alarm pheromones are released. They would chase a perceived threat up to a mile from their hive, causing severe pain and even death to its victim. Africanized bees have migrated into the southern United States, mating with non-Africanized bees, producing a still aggressive hybrid bee. Due to natural crossbreeding among the various species of bees, there has been a blending of traits. Therefore, the breed of bees that you believe you have may exhibit traits of other subspecies. For this reason, many beekeepers refer to honeybees in the United States as Americanized bees. In this chapter, we'll look at the eusocial characteristics of the honeybee. Honeybees are classified as eusocial, as are some other insects in their order, like ants and wasps. Eusocial insects have these four characteristics. They live together in groups, they share in brood care, they have a continual overlapping generation, and they have reproductive division of labors where not all members reproduce. Let's take a look at these closely. Honeybees live together in a group. The group is called a colony, and the colony is made up of many bees of different ages with different responsibilities. There is no individuals in the colony as they all work together performing tasks necessary for survival. Cooperative brood care is one of these necessary tasks whereby workers called house bees clean the cells, preparing them for the queen to lay her eggs. Once the eggs are laid and hatched, the house bees feed the larvae food brought in by the foragers, while other bees keep the brood warm until they hatch. This is the classic example of cooperative brood care, where all of the bees share in the brood rearing task. Overlapping of generations. This characteristic is displayed by the fact that it takes honeybees of all ages for the colony to survive, whereby in order to maintain a healthy colony there should be eggs, larvae, brood, and bees at all times. And the final eusocial characteristic of the honeybee is that they have a reproductive division of labor where not all members reproduce. While the worker bees are all females, it is the responsibility of a single queen to reproduce for the entire colony. These eusocial characteristics are necessary for the honeybees to survive. There is only one queen in a colony, and she is the only bee capable of laying fertile eggs. Her egg laying rate is controlled by the amount and the kind of food she is fed by the nurse bees and by the temperature of the brood area. She normally deposits one egg vertical to the bottom of the cell with the small end down. She lays eggs in the size of cells based on the colony's need. A larger cell for drones and a normal cell for workers. A young queen may deposit more than one egg in a cell, but the worker bees will remove the surplus egg, allowing only one to develop. She can lay between 1,500 and 3,000 eggs a day at the peak of her production. The queen normally makes several maiden flights, 5 to 10 days after she emerges as an adult. During these flights, she will mate with an average of 12 drones, storing sperm in her spermatheca for later use. The Hymenoptera have an haploid sex determination system whereby females come from fertilized diploid eggs and males come from unfertilized haploid eggs. The spermatozoa received from the drone is stored in a special storage organism, the spermatheca, and is used to fertilize the egg by releasing a few sperms as each egg passes across the opening of the duct from the spermatheca. In this way, the queen controls fertilization, depositing fertilized eggs in workers or queen cells and unfertilized eggs in drone cells. The queen may leave the hive only twice in her lifetime, once during her maiden flight and again if the colony decides to swarm. However, it is possible for a mated queen that was installed into a packet to never leave the hive. Queens can live up to 5 years, although in modern beekeeping, queens are often replaced annually by beekeepers. When a queen shows sign of failing, she is generally superseded by a new queen that has been reared by the workers. Although the queen does not have the ability to feed or care for the young or gather nectar and pollen, she can produce a pheromone that influences the colony's behavior. The queen produces a unique odor called queen mandibular pheromone, which causes the worker bee to surround her in what is called a queen retinue. Touching her with their antenna and licking her to collect these substances, they then distribute the pheromone to other bees throughout the colony. Lack of this pheromone in the colony influences supersedure preparations. The laying queen is the largest bee in the colony, and her abdomen is longer than that of a worker. Her thorax is broader and deeper than a worker. Her compound eyes are somewhat smaller, but her mandibles are well developed and are notched instead of smooth like those of a worker. The queen's tongue is smaller, but her antennae are larger than the workers. The queen has a slightly curved stinger with shorter barbs and is not lost in the act of killing a rival queen, for which it is used most exclusively. The ovaries of the laying queen are well developed, unlike a worker's, but her wax and other glands are undeveloped compared to the worker. The worker, like the queen, is female, but her reproductive organs are underdeveloped. Workers are 85 to 90% of the population of the colony. And while the sexual organs of the workers are underdeveloped, workers have other organs necessary to carry on many tasks connected with the social life of the colony. Their mandibles are smooth and rounded, ideal for molding wax and cleaning cells. They have glands in their head and throats used for producing food and secreting enzymes. The 4 sets of wax glands on the underside of the abdomen are well developed for converting honey or other carbohydrates into beeswax. The worker stinger is barbed and is usually pulled from her body when stinging results in her death. The honey stomach is an enlargement of the esophagus used for carrying liquids from the fill. They keep the hive clean, feed the larvae, secrete beeswax, and construct comb, raise the queen when necessary, ventilate and guard the hive, convert nectar from honey, and store honey and pollen in cells. They feed the queen a granular secretion called royal jelly, and they also feed the larvae and the drones for as long as they are allowed to stay in the hive. The length of a worker's life depends upon the amount of work done and the temperature. During the active season, bees spend about 3 weeks working in the hive as house bees and 3 to 4 weeks as field bees. The type of work a bee performs depends upon its age, the development of various glands, and on the need of the colony. The order of the age and task are: day 1 to 2, cleaning cells and warming brood; days 3 to 5, feeding older larvae and attending to the queen; days 6 to 11, feed the younger larvae, cap cells; days 12 through 17, build comb, transport food, regulate hive temperature, and circulate air in the colony; days 18 through 21, guard hive entrance; and days 22 to 45, foraging. These are the age and the task of the workers in the colony. Drones are the male bees of the colony, and their primary function is to mate with a virgin queen. If successful, the drone dies. Drones make up approximately 15% of the population of the colony during the summer and are easy to distinguish from the queen or worker because they are wider and longer than the worker but shorter than the queen. Their compound eyes meet on the top of their head. Their antennae are larger with 13 segments instead of 12 segments of the worker and the queen. The mouth parts are smaller and the mandibles are chisel-like and notched. They do not have pollen baskets on their legs and have no stingers. They do not forage for either pollen or nectar and are fed by the house bees. When they are no longer needed for mating in the fall, they are driven from the hive by the workers who stop feeding them. A honeybee colony grows during the active forage season and decreases in size during the colder non-foraging season. In the height of the foraging season, a strong, healthy colony can number between 40 to 60,000 bees. Honeybees develop in 4 distinct phases: egg, larva, pupa, and adult. Their development time varies among the 3 kinds of bees, with the drone taking the longest at 24 days, then 21 days for the worker, and 16 days for the queen. Let's take a closer look at the honeybee phases of development. In this section, we will look at the phases of development of the honeybee as the bee goes from an egg to larva to pupa to adult. Let's start with the egg. While the honeybee egg resembles tiny white grains of rice, it is the queen that determines the sex of all bees in the colony. If she lays an egg in a worker-sized cell, she will release a fertilized egg into that cell, which will develop into a worker. If she lays an egg in a larger drone cells, she will lay a non-fertilized egg, which will develop into a drone. The decision about how many workers and drones to be laid depends on the need of the colony, which is collectively made by the queen and the workers. After 3 days, the eggs hatch into a larva, which looks like tiny grubs curled up in the bottom of a cell. They will grow very quick, shedding their skin 5 times before their cell is capped. The larvae are fed on an average of 1,300 times per day. First, the nurse bees feed them royal jelly for 3 days, followed by a mixture of honey, pollen, and saliva called bee bread, before the worker bees cap the larvae in the cells with beeswax. Once the cell is capped, the larva is spun into a cocoon. Once the cocoon is spun, the pupa begins the process of transforming into an adult bee with eyes, legs, and wings taking shape. After 12 days, the adult worker bee chews her way through the wax cap to join the colony. Understanding the time it takes each type of bee to develop is important for a beekeeper who wants to know if the queen is viable and producing, when she last laid, when to expect bees to emerge, and for basic overall hive management. A good guideline for tracking honeybee development is the chart listed on this page, which illustrates the phases and time of development for each type of bee. In this section, we'll take a look at honey and other bee products. Let's start with honey. The honey process starts when the forager bees draw in nectar through their proboscis, straw-like tongues, and store it in their honey stomach, where they add the enzyme called invertase. This invertase begins breaking down the sucrose into glucose and fructose as the bee carries the nectar back to the colony. The foragers then transfer the nectar to the house bees, where more enzymes are added. The house bees regurgitate and re-drink the nectar over a 20-minute period, which further breaks down the sugar and begins to evaporate the excess water. The bees then fan the nectar to speed up the evaporation process and further condense the nectar into honey. They stop only after the water concentrate is between 17 and 18% and then move it to its storage location. Pollen is critical to the health of the colony, providing food for brood rearing, protein, carbohydrates, lipids, vitamins, and minerals. Seeing pollen come into the hive in the early spring is a sign that the colony is healthy and is beginning to increase its brood rearing. The various colors of pollen depend on the flowers from which it is being gathered. Pollen is stuffed into the receptacles on the back legs of the workers called corbiculi. A single bee can carry about half their weight in pollen. Beeswax is made from sugar and carbohydrates by 10 to 20-day-old house bees when wax production glands. Propolis, also called bee glue, is gathered from tree buds or pitch from trees and is a strong antibacterial. Bees use it to inhibit the growth of bacteria, fungus, or other unwanted microbes that can thrive in the warm, humid environment of the hive. The source of propolis depends on access to resin-producing vegetation such as poplar and pine. The bees use propolis inside of the hive to fasten frames together, plugging holes and cracks, or sealing over dead invaders such as mice when they can't be removed. Royal jelly is a white, thick fluid that is secreted from the hypopharyngeal gland in the head of young worker bees. It is fed to all the young larvae for the first 3 days, but only the queen is fed royal jelly exclusively throughout her larva stage. This concludes Chapter 1.